Hey everybody, this is Javi, and I am the Bowtie Psychic. Thank you so much for watching tonight, or listening, rather, if you are following me on Spotify. If you are just now tuning in, I'm a psychic medium and a spiritual activist. And first off, again, I want to thank you for tuning in this week. I'm really appreciating y'all, and your support. I really do appreciate it. The more people who listen or who watch, the more people I get to serve as a medium and a psychic. And I just like just providing services for people, to be honest with you. So this is just another service um, to utilize in order for me to connect with people. And speaking of which, we have some, or at least I do. I have some important things to talk about in regards to purpose and having the bravery to stand in that purpose to further your cause politically. Um, but before I get started, I'd like to invite my spiritual team into the room to guide my words. Dear higher spirit, I pray that you use me as a vessel, and whatever comes through is from you. The highest is the best of my guardians, ancestors, wise ones, guardian angels, archangels, ascended masters. I pray that whatever comes through, it will come from a place of light and love and is rooted in truth. And I pray that you put the white light of protection around me and those who are tuned in. Ashe. So every week, you're left with an assignment centering around meditation, and I consider that a non-negotiable, something that I do every day, something to do every day. Not only to connect with spirit, but to get started with your day, especially if you are working with a lot of people that take up a lot of energy. And so, excuse me, meditation would definitely keep you grounded, and pretty much connected with spirit and your spirit team. Um, so you can always tap in, to help you calm down when something does go horribly awry. Um, because again, you are dealing with people, and there are folks that you are going to be dealing with who are low vibrational or having a bad day or want to pop off on you or something like that, and you don't wish. Excuse me. You have like this urge to react. Meditation will actually like help you calm down, take some deep breaths. I'm hoping it doesn't happen every day as far as people going off on you. That would be messed up. But that's neither here nor there. It's a spiritual tool to use, um, where something does go horribly awry or not. Um, but another reason why I, come up with these assignments, it's not just me, it's spirit that's working through me to give you these assignments, these weekly assignments, and it will lead you to, um, again, connect with spirit. But connecting with spirit and your spirit team will also lead you to discovering your own purpose, why you do things the way you do, why you are here. And you're probably asking, what does that mean? Explain yourself. And what I'm implying when I say that is that the more connected you are with spirit, which is why you are asked to meditate for at least 5 minutes a day, the more likely you'll be able to discover your purpose and discover why you're here, and to understand why you're here and why you do what you do, especially politically. And when I was started, and I say this is because, that's how I was able to find mine. I was able to find my purpose through meditation and through a couple of years of study, even though I've been, spiritually connected on and off for years. This is actually the first time I actually discovered my purpose and actually like got knee deep into my own spirituality. When I started working with Nikila Asha a couple of years ago, she told me that each human being goes through um, their experiences and experience everything that we've gone through, on an emotional, mental, even spiritual level. If you're opened up at that point to that, every experience that we go through makes us who we are. And it plays a role in our actions and why we do what we do. Okay. And our purpose stems from our experiences and what we're affected by and how we're affected by those experiences. Okay. And I've heard this before from a lot of other metaphysical practitioners, and I never believed it up until this point. I did not believe what they were saying. In fact, I would completely tune them out because I felt like it was, in a way, condoning abuse. After, regardless of how it was explained to me, I felt like it was just like, looking back at your experiences and saying that, they made you who you are. I'm like, I'm not abusive in any way, shape, or form. At least I don't think I am. And so I always dismissed what was told to me, by these people, because I was like, look, I have been severely abused throughout my childhood. There's no way that those experiences made me who I am. I was bullied and, called everything, but a child of spirit. What purpose did that serve, right? And so it took me years for years. I say it didn't take me years. For years, I did everything I could to like basically block that out. Basically saying like they don't know what they're talking about, or they have not been through what I've been through as far as the severity of the abuse that I've been through. And so when I began working with Nikila, doing the spiritual work, that required me to listen. Like I actually listened while I started doing the work. I didn't, to be honest with you, I didn't trust a lot of practitioners, metaphysical practitioners, and Nikila was one of those people, that when I started working with her, I didn't trust her very much either. And so when she told me the same thing, I'm like, okay, it's the same stuff, different day. Okay. But when I started listening to working with her, I started listening because, for one, I started to realize that she was not like other practitioners that I have worked with in the past. And through her, I began trusting, the process. And I began seeing what it meant when I was told that my experiences shaped me. And those experiences and everything I've been through will actually help me find my purpose, discover my purpose and why I'm actually here. And I'll give you an example. Okay, I'll give you an example. As I said before, I had a severe abuse history. I was sexually abused. Oh, for one, trigger warning. I'm mentioning abuse, not in detail, but I am mentioning it because it's a part of my truth, it's a part of my story. So I'm just letting y'all know straight up and flat out, and giving you a trigger warning. But I was severely abused as a child. I was sexually abused as a child. Um, I was economically and verbally, physically, and emotionally abused by my mom. Okay, so I'm also a survivor of bullying. And because of the bullying that I went through, um, I myself turned into a bully by not only pretty much jumping on the kids at school, but also abusing my brothers at home, which I since made amends for. And I'm also a product of or I'm a child of divorce too. So my parents are divorced, have been divorced for quite a number of years. They divorced when I was 9. I was also affected by that. Um, so there was a lot of anger that I had as a child, and there was always a lot of resentment, a lot of jealousy and envy towards other children because their families were together and mine were not. And I also was like very much a witness to abuse, um, outside of experiencing it myself and having it inflicted upon me. Um, I just saw a lot of chaos in my life, and I didn't realize and did not understand why I was going through this. Um, it was very silent about it, um, for the most part, because I felt like people did not understand what I was going through. And at the same time, I always had like this thought in the back of my mind because for those who don't know, I've had paranormal experiences when I was a child, um, and so I've always had this someone in the back of my head or someone um, giving me the message that my life was going to be a lot better than it was and a lot better than I was experiencing. Um, and this like and I always felt and I felt comforted by that particular message, and I kept that particular message with me um, for as long as I could. I'm thinking it was as a means of survival, but I really did feel as if you know that was spirit. In retrospect, that was definitely spirit telling me that the life that or the experiences I was having, they were not going to be in vain. That my life was going to be a lot better than it was at that particular point. And despite all the anger and the trauma that surrounded me, I also love to read and internalize information, pass along that information, write about that information. Um, Basically, I love the whole aspect of being a storyteller, um, in some way, shape, or form. And that was something that I found that excuse me, that was natural to me in some way, shape, or form. And um, even though I loved giving information and doing everything I can to retain that information, um, I was often told that my opinion didn't matter. Nobody cared about what I said. That I was stupid, and that there was no way that I was going to succeed. And I not only heard that from my own mother, I heard that from other family members and kids that I went to school with, right? And being surrounded by information and realizing how much abuse and injustice harmed people, though, like even though I heard all those messages and all those tapes were running in my mind, um and playing in my mind over and over and over, I still there was because of what was going on, because I while to back it up a little bit, my my mother was also abusive towards my brother, and I was always protecting him, and I hated the fact that she went after him simply because he looked out like a lot like our father. Okay, so knowing, like, experiencing that, experiencing my own abuse, and realizing that how much injustice has harmed people, um, I became an activist in my hometown of Springfield, Illinois. Because in my mind, I knew what it was like. I started working with the GLBTIQA community back home, and I knew what it was like to be bullied. I knew what it was like to have someone look at you differently, because you were perceived as the other. I knew what that was like. And so I resonated with that particular community. And also, I was around 19 when I got involved, and I identified as bi. And so I just, more than ever, I wanted to learn more about myself within that particular community and be involved as I possibly can. even back in I want to say the mid '90s, no, I'm sorry, the late '90s, there was this fight, at least in my hometown, for marriage equality, and so we would, you know, go lobby, in the Capitol, and talk to governors and things like that. And this is like in the beginning stages of my own political, activist career. And so fast forward to adulthood, and I started doing the spiritual work necessary, for myself to heal, and to basically learn from my experiences, and to put them behind me, so to speak. And it'll be years before I do that. Um, and while I was connecting with spirits and my guides, here, as a 30-something-year-old person, I realized, um, pretty much was told by spirit that my role in this life was to be a teacher, a spiritual teacher. That's in fact, that's the reason why I went through what I went through, why I went through all that stuff, so I can teach people. And for one, you are a spiritual being. Two, you're above your abuse. You're not your abuse. You're not your circumstances. And as a trans person, God does not make mistakes. Spirit does not make mistakes. You're here for a reason, and you deserve to be here. And so my purpose, consists of me, serving my purpose consists of me, utilizing my writing, this podcast, my spiritual gifts, my love for talking and teaching, basically I'm using these tools to reach out to the masses, and to reach out to the trans and queer community in particular, and those who have been through what I've been through as far as trauma. This is, in fact, again, this is one of the reasons why this podcast is here, and why I'm doing this, is basically to talk about, historical trauma, generational trauma, spirituality, and how we can, use spirituality to heal, and to use our abilities to heal to help people within our community. Because how many times have we gone to I sound so weird. But basically, how many times have we gotten involved? That's what I wanted to say before I got all tongue tied. Um, how we wanted to get involved, how many times we wanted to get involved, and um, and basically be, the ones to have all this fire, and to have all this information, and have this drive to help the community, to be there for the community. But we're burned out, or we're angry, or we feel very empty still. It's because despite all the work that we're doing, there's a lot of us out here doing the work, doing the political work, but the spiritual component is not there. Within ourselves, we're not healed within ourselves, especially if we've gone through trauma, and especially if we have mental illness that has gone unchecked. In fact, this is one of the reasons why a lot of us self-medicate in some way, shape, or form. And I'm talking about activists within the community, and that's a whole nother episode altogether. But I say all this is because in order for us to do the political work and do it to our fullest capacity, and give it our all, especially if we're working with marginalized people, we are to know our purpose. We are to know what our purpose is. We are to know why we do what we do politically. And the only way to do that is to connect with spirit, and to realize, what your gifts are, as a spiritual being, and to use those gifts, to to elevate politically and to elevate other people politically, because it all stems from, you know, knowing yourself and knowing your purpose in order to thrive politically and to be of service, you know. And I'm not, you know, minimizing anybody's work, and I'm hoping that, you know, it doesn't come off that way. But what I'm just basically saying is that um and I'm also speaking for personal experience as well. When you don't know yourself, and you don't, how can you truly know your purpose? Um, because I too was out there doing all this political work, not only in Springfield but here in Rochester, doing all this political work, going to all these rallies, going to all this, you know, putting my whole foot in, you know, in political movements. Like, I was knee deep in the political community, and I still felt empty, and I still felt unhappy, and I still felt like I didn't know what I was doing. I was just running and running and running, and was basically using a lot of unhealthy coping mechanisms as a result. When in actuality, all I needed to do, in actuality, I shouldn't say need. I'll cancel, delete that. But basically, looking back on it, it was just me not knowing my purpose and struggling with why I was here to begin with. I was doing all this work and didn't know why I was here, um, because I wanted to be so helpful and to be known as a prominent political activist. And so there were a couple of books I have here that actually highlights what I'm talking about, or, you know, at least, you know, there's an example. So the Celestine Prophecy is a book I bought a long time ago, or maybe it was given to me, I don't know. But it's written by James Redfield, and James Redfield is is an individual who was an ex-teacher, former teacher rather, who was very interested in the human experience. So he went to Peru and got involved, you know, with finding the insights, you know, through other people. And one of those people was Father Sanchez. And this particular passage that I'm going to read actually highlights what I'm talking about as far as examining your purposes, your experiences, in order to find what your purpose is. And so there is just a conversation between him and Father Sanchez, and Father Sanchez basically drops some knowledge on him. So here we go. So it says here, quote unquote, think about how the events of your life fit together. From the beginning, you were interested in mysterious topics, and that interest finally led you to study human nature. Why do you think you happened to meet that particular teacher? He crystallized your interest and led you into looking at the greatest mystery, the human situation, the human situation on our planet, the question of what life is about. Then, at some level, you knew that life's meaning was connected to the problem of transcending our past conditioning and moving our lives forward. That's why you were working with those kids. But as you can understand now, it has taken the insights to clear up what was missing in your technique with those youths. In order for emotionally disturbed children to evolve, they have to do what we all have to do: get connected with enough energy to see through their intense control drama, what you call acting out, and go forward in what turns out to be a spiritual process, a process that you've been trying to understand all along. See the higher perspective in these events. All the interests that led you forward in your past, all these stages of growth were just preparing you to be here now, exploring the insights. You've been working on your evolutionary search for a self-enhancing spirituality throughout your entire life. And the energy you acquired from that natural spot where you grew up, an energy your grandfather was trying to show you, finally gave you the courage to come to Peru. You are here because this is where you need to be to continue the evolution. Your whole life has been a long road. Your whole life has been a long road leading directly to this moment. So basically what Father Sanchez was saying is that everything that James Redfield went through, read, experienced, led him to his need for a spiritual evolution or a search for spiritual evolution. Basically, he went to Peru because of his need to, or his desire to seek knowledge, and his desire to see what these insights are and what they mean to him. And basically, that passage really highlights how our past experiences can lead us to where we are. And when we start to examine why we do what we do and what leads us down a certain path, and what leads us to a certain part, as far as our life, that's when we start to discover, okay, this is my purpose. This is my purpose. I did this because I'm supposed to be doing this. Okay. For instance, I'm supposed to be a spiritual teacher. This is one of the reasons why I do what I do. And through meditation, I was able to figure that out. So basically, that's what that is, right? It's seriously because your past, basically molds you into who you are. My abusive past, even though it made me who I am, it did not define me, as far as my behavior, as far as, how I treat other people. It definitely, those experiences taught me, one, that's not how I want to treat people. And two, it's something that that made me realize that the abuse that I went through will help me connect with other people who have been through those same experiences, and I'm able to use my spiritual, my spiritual teachings and my spirituality in general to help people, and basically be a living example of what can happen if you just allow spirit to use you as a vessel, and to use you as someone who can actually help people, especially politically, because there's a lot of us who have a history of abuse, and who are active in the community, and they have all these coping mechanisms. They may or may not be healthy, or they just need someone to talk to. You can be there for that person. You can be there for that particular person. Being That's where like a lot of interdependence comes from. And again, this is one of the reasons why I do what I do. And because I know my purpose, Spirit is showing me where to go and how to do this work, showing me and leading me towards the direction where I'm supposed to be going, which is why I no longer feel so fragmented, or feel like I am to stretch myself thin energetically, because I'm involved in so many things. I'm involved in so many things, or I was involved in so many things at one point. When I was much younger, I was very active in the political community here in Rochester. I was at almost every rally, at every march, at every protest, at every meeting, basically just wanting to help people and wanting to help people and wanting to help people, and do for the community politically, and so on and so forth. And so what I got out of that is just basically burnout. And that was also around the same time I was a recovered alcoholic. Wasn't even when I got involved in the community, I was probably like a year or so sober. And so I was still trying to figure out who I was as a person, like any other 20-year-old. Okay. And I'm thinking that once I hit 30, that emptiness that I always felt in my 20s would actually go away, when it didn't. And it's because many factors played into that. But the main reason is that I did not know my purpose and what I was doing here, and what I was supposed to be doing, because I always thought about stuff like that. And so another example that I have is Girls Resist. I highly recommend this book. It is written by KaeLyn Rich. You can buy it on Amazon. And basically, it's catered towards young women who are want to be leaders in their community as activists. And so she uses, throughout the entire book, she uses her own life as an example, you know, as an example as to why she got involved, and, to basically illustrate what to do as an activist, so on and so forth. And she's been active for years in the Rochester community. And so she writes something, because she uses her own childhood and her story, as her identity rather, as a queer female Asian activist, who grew up as an adoptee. And so here's her story right here. She says, she said, most young women, then men, are enrolling in medical and law schools and are graduating from college. So why do I think that girls are being told they don't matter? Because I remember feeling like I had to look pretty, thin, and white. I remember thinking that being attractive to boys was the most important thing. I remember being in the closet about my bisexuality, being a Korean girl in a mostly white school, being fat, and being afraid to be myself. I remember feeling powerless to stand up to the things that made me feel small and all the things that seemed unfair about my world. I also remember when I realized that I had a voice I could use to speak up for others and for myself. I remember when I came to understand that I could be beautiful without changing a thing about myself. I remember knowing in my gut that something was wrong and wanting to change it for the better. I remember turning my early passions for volunteering and helping people into a crusade for for social justice. I am still that girl. I am that woman today. And so that's just one of many examples she has in the book. And that's more than one example of her demonstrating that her past shaped her as she was. She knows her purpose. She knows, as an activist, she knows that her job in this world is to not only better our society, but to empower the young women and young girls who are struggling with their identity, who are struggling with who they are, as far as how society sees them. And, she was like, look, let me back up. I remember when I did an article before the Empty Closet, and it featured KaeLyn Ridge. In fact, it centered her and her book, Girls Resist. And the one thing she said, do not wait for a superhero, be your own superhero, something along those lines. And basically, that's what finding your purpose is, being your own superhero, being your own political and spiritual superhero, being, not being afraid of doing the work if necessary, to better yourself personally and spiritually in order for you to be of service politically, because you are to put yourself first. Okay. And when I say put yourself first, I'm not saying be selfish or do some type of Ayn Rand type of thing where, pertaining to, objectivism. That's not what I'm saying at all. What I am saying is that, yes, do the political work, but in order for you it's okay to better yourself, especially in order for you to do this political work. Because what like I said, time and time again, you cannot be helpful to other people, at least use your full capacity, or be there fully, if you don't know who you are, or you're now working towards that. And if you don't know who you are, you don't know your purpose. If you don't know your purpose, you're going to fall for anything and everything. You're going to be stretching yourself thin. You're going to be, doing everything you can to, undercut people, or you're going to be undercutting yourself. There's a lot of, that there's a lot to be said, for people, or about people who do not know about themselves. I remember being that person and being lost. And granted, I didn't undercut anyone by any means. I'm not saying that, all of us act like that if we don't know ourselves. But I do recognize that people who do not know themselves versus those who do, there is this, there's this particular emptiness that one has when they don't know their direction, or don't have a connection with spirit in some way, shape, or form. So that's one of the reasons why it's important to know who you are, because once you know who you are, you stand in that. You stand in your purpose. You stand in who you are, and you're not easily swayed by any type of outside opinion. As far as your own ideologies, if they are correct, especially when it comes to knowing spirit and knowing yourself and knowing where you stand politically. So that's all I have about that. And so, on that note, here is your assignment for this week. After meditating, reflect on your past experiences, right? How do they shape you? How did they shape you as a person and as an activist? What or who influenced you? Excuse me, to become involved in politics. What made you get involved in this? And I have my own example. My abuse history and seeing injustice. How how I saw injustice, afflicted in my own home, made me want to get involved. So yours don't have to involve an abuse history, of course. But what made you come to the resolve that in order for you to change the world, you are to be involved as an activist? So again, after meditating, reflect on your past experiences. How do they shape you as a person and as an activist? And who and what influenced you to become involved in politics? Okay. So please post your responses in the comments if you so choose, or you can email me at bowtiepsychic@gmail.com to see what you come up with. It's your choice. I'm just very, very interested in what you come up with. And so I don't know about you, but I am very much ready for a break. So I will be right back with a message for Spirit, from Spirit rather. So stay tuned. And I am back. This is Javi, and I am the Bowtie Psychic for those who are just tuning in. This week I am using the Oracle of the Mermaids deck by Lucy Cavendish. Here she is right here. So, Oracle of the Mermaids. I usually use the Dreams of Gaia, but I want to switch it up this time. So here we go. Actually, I got these at a metaphysical shop. So, but you can probably find them online, more than likely. So that's another thing too. I love cards. I love tarot cards. I'm actually taking a class to go way deeper with tarot cards, and I'm always looking for new decks. So if you know of any that are like story oriented or political oriented, or anything pertaining to old Hollywood movies or silent movies, by all means let me know. I also found like an Edward Gorey well, it wasn't. It was. I guess it's like the illustration was like somewhat Edward Gorey-ish, and I really liked it. And so, I'm definitely gonna check those out pretty soon. But right now, we're gonna get going or get started rather, and get a message from Spirit. It's been a while since I've used these cards, but I still feel something. So let's do this. Your higher spirit, I pray to use me as a vessel. And whatever comes through is from you. Highest and the best of my guardians, ancestors, wise ones, guardian angels, archangels. Whatever message comes through, it will come from a place of light and love and is rooted in truth. And I pray that you put the white light protection around me and those who are tuned in. Right. This message is for, I'm getting the GLBTIQA community as a whole. What message do you have for the gay, lesbian, trans, bi, intersex, queer, and questioning agender community? Wow. So the first card that came up is called the Water Flight card. And alternative is came in upside down. And what it says here, heaviness lifts, burdens are cast away, weightlessness. And it's upside down. It has a mermaid underwater. She's carefree and floating. And if it were right side up, this card would basically say that, a heaviness would be lifted off our shoulders. But what this card is saying when it's upside down is that we have a lot more work to do. There's a heaviness throughout the entire community. There's a heaviness, especially among those who are trans and queer, and those who are what I'm getting is that we are to stop, as a community, we are to stop fighting each other. That's where the heaviness is coming from. This heaviness is not over because we're continuously fighting one another about who is the most oppressed, who is the most not only are we who is the most oppressed, but who deserves more. Okay. And I'm looking at the gay and lesbian community when I'm looking at this, or when I'm looking at this card. Okay. We are all in this together. Okay. We're all in this together. There was no need for us to fight over oppression, about who's the most oppressed and who is getting more, because quite frankly, the current administration is messing with all of us. It's not just, just the trans in the queer community, but it's going after the everybody, the gay and lesbian community as well. There is the bisexual community is constantly being erased as well within our community, within the rainbow spectrum. And that needs to end. The racism also needs to end, because what's happening is that a lot of white, unfortunately, a lot of white gay cis males are doing the most out in our community, basically doing all they can to use their own privilege as a white cis person to undercut everybody else. And what that card is saying is that needs to end, because we are in this together. The current administration isn't looking out for any of us. You hear me? It's not. And to put yourself, cis gay person, on the pedestal, and the one person I'm thinking about is the one guy who is he founded Gays for Trump, and he's going to be undercutted, and he's not going to get away with what he's doing. What I'm getting is that anyone who's undercutting the community as a whole is hurting the community as a whole. And it doesn't make any sense for anybody who is a marginalized person to cut down another marginalized demographic. It doesn't make any sense. It is not going to prove anything either. And so what that card is basically saying is that it is really time to stop, especially the gay and lesbian community who is basically using, especially those in the Caucasian community. They're out here using everything they can to undercut, the rest of us in the spectrum. So what that card is saying is that the heaviness would lift if we start to work together. The heaviness would lift if we will stop, because if one group will stop considering the other. Because once we start othering ourselves, we've lost already. We've lost. So we are to come together. We are to become interdependent, and we are to realize that the current administration is after all of us. So what this card is saying, Song of the Siren. Okay, the call, the summoning, the voice to acknowledge. Already what I'm getting from this card is that we are to raise our voices. We are to come together and to raise our voices in every way, shape, or form. For those who are listening, this is a mermaid who she has white, I guess, like gray hair, and she's singing and performing almost, and this is a Song of the Siren card. And basically what this card is saying is that we are to raise our voices and raise our voice, come together to raise our voice and to sing our song of justice. Because what's happening is that, again, the current administration, even though we have all these victories with the midterm election, we have a Muslim, as a senator now, in the Senate now. We have a gay, lesbian, a lesbian, a native. We have a lot of women, women of color, who are a part of the Senate now. But what that card is particularly saying is that, yes, we have all these victories, but the work, again, isn't done. And we are to use our voices collectively to sing our song in order for us to get what we deserve and get what we desired. And this is where spirituality comes from. Basically, we are to come together and manifest what we are desiring and what we are to have as a collective, and to basically be on the same page. Because once we are not on the same page, there's division. And when there's division, we can be easily conquered. And so we cannot allow ourselves to be conquered. We cannot allow ourselves to allow cis male baby boomers that use their privilege to undercut us and to get into our minds, so we start undercutting each other. Because that's one of the reasons why a lot of leftist organizations fall apart, because we allowed ourselves to be infiltrated. We allowed the infighting. We allowed ourselves to be divided by, a lot of infighting. And so what that particular card, the Song of the Siren card, is saying is that at this point, we are powerful, and that we've always been powerful. But at this point, we are powerful enough. The LGBTIQA community is to come together to not and sing our song and not undercut one another. To come up with different tactics, to come up with different, tactics and movements, and to organize in a way that is extremely efficient, and also and innovative. Extremely innovative. We are to come together and use spirituality to do that, to find other ways, innovative ways to fight the system and to fight for our own freedom. Because if not, and we keep doing the same thing over and over again, we're going to get the same results. So yes, even though we have these victories that happened about a couple of days ago or 2 days ago, it's pretty much time for us to basically do something else, find something else to maintain the power that's in the Senate, or in the house rather, but also find other ways to basically they come together as a collective. They come together as a collective and basically put on, um, our political hats and figure out what we're going to do, and basically not to infight, because I understand that a lot of us are radical. When basically leftist is an umbrella term. So you have liberals, you have radicals, you have leftists, you have socialists, or you have socialists. Um, you have anarchists. We are to come together, and if we need to, um, find a happy medium, find some sort of compromise, find some way, or, to work one another or tolerate one another in some way, shape, or form, and to basically have rules and regulations as far as what needs to happen, and to basically bring spirit into the mix. I'm not talking about, something like, I'm not talking about something that's dogmatic either. I'm talking about, this is why I say, like, in order for us to come together, we are to find our own spiritual core. We are to find our own spirituality to connect with spirit, and to connect in order to connect with ourselves. Because if not, we could easily fall to something that we don't believe in. And here we are with the infighting. So we are to come together. I'm talking about the LGBTIQA community. We are to come together, excuse me, and to put our differences aside, politically, so we can collectively to fight fight among, aside one another, and not get into um, and get into this whole thing about tactics and things like that, and get hemmed up with that. And so Soul Cage basically is a mermaid hoisting up a man, and he is like, she's trying to push him up to the shore so he won't drown. And so it says rescue, escape from captivity and restriction. Okay. So that's what this card says. It says rescue, escape from captivity and restriction. Basically, what this card is saying is that we are not to restrict ourselves. Um, we are not to do the same things over and over and over again. We are to think outside the box. We are to take off our own restraints. This means that when it comes to this whole thing about identity and who says who's strange, who all that other stuff, that needs to be put aside. I'm not trying to deal with. No, here's the thing. The only thing you are to be fighting are turfs. That's the thing. If they're coming, turfs are one thing. If they're trying to infiltrate the situation, you have no obligation to deal with them. But as far as the community is concerned, like, we're not going to sit here and have total discussions about why trans people are not allowed into the situation, why intersex people are to choose one another, why bisexual people are to choose one or the other, why gay folks are this, that, and the third. If we are to have those conversations, it is going to be in a way that is informative. It has to be in a way that is as respectful. We are not to undercut one another based on identity. We are not to undercut one another based on personal ideologies. And when I say personal ideologies, I'm talking about who's trans, who's gay, who's all this other stuff. That's not important. That's not important. Okay, that type of stuff is why the community is a mess in the first place. Okay, we're literally letting toxic masculinity, misogynoir, and misogyny, and transphobia, homophobia, all the other forms of oppression eat away at our community, eat away at the GLBTIQA community. This is not the time for all that. That I'm being real. That that's what Spirit is telling me. This is not the time for that. So, with that being said, we're allowing ourselves, when we get into those type of conversations, and we get into those type of conversations about who's more important, or who's real, who's fake, who's this, that, and third, we're trapping ourselves into something that is extremely toxic and extremely unhealthy, and is rooted in white supremacy, to be honest with you. So long story short, we are to push that aside. In fact, check for those who do get into those type of conversations, as far as someone's identity and whether or not they're allowed. This is not the Little Rascals. You know what I mean? This is not girls only or boys only, gays only type of stuff. This is not the Little Rascals, to be honest with you. So what the card is saying is that check your privilege, check your ideology, question your ideology, and allow yourself to be free from all those restraints brought on by oppression. Get out of this mentality that somehow you are better than someone else just simply because they identify as something else and you identify as one thing. This is one of the reasons why the community, the LGBTIQ community, is falling apart, because we sat here and allowed oppression to basically take over the community and basically infiltrate itself into the community and spread like a cancer. We got to watch out for that. Let me see. So, shuffling cards here. Yeah, like I said, there's the Oracle of the Mermaids. And like I said, I love cards. I wish I could have like a whole selection. Is this upside down or upside down? All right. So I have the Telepathy Card, and the Telepathy Card are two mermaids with red hair, red fins, and looks like red coral around their whatnots, around their breasts rather, and basically the Telepathy Card says nonverbal communication, energetic pulses, mind reading, quote unquote mind reading. We are to communicate as a community with each other about what is right, what is wrong, what is bothering us, what is not bothering us. We are to communicate with each other so we can work together. And I'm talking about the LGBTIQA community, plus community. We are to work to speak with one another. We're a lot of us, unless you're connected with spirit, are not mind readers. They're not. There are folks who are not going to understand what you're saying, and not everybody is clued up on, different types of sexual expression or political ideologies or different identities, because there's more. That's why the plus is after the A. After when you're talking about the spectrum. Or the community in general, because there are people out there who there's more than two genders. There is more than two forms of sexual expression. There are more than two identities, and so not everybody's going to know pronouns. Not everyone's going to know what words to use, so on and so forth. So this is a time for us to have a conversation about that type of stuff, about identity expression and political ideologies, because that's the only way that we are going to be able to work together. we can't work alongside one another if we're resenting that one. If one is resenting that one person because they use the wrong pronoun, and they're passive aggressive and all this other stuff. No, because the lack of communication is definitely something that is going to break down an organization, or break down a community, or break down a group of people who are working together. It's going to be a problem if you don't open your mouth. And one thing I want to point out with that card, the Telepathy Card, this is, I can't stress enough that not everyone has a college education. Not everyone is learned when it comes to certain ideologies such as feminism, Black womanism, intersectional feminism, anarchism, so on and so forth. Not everybody's learned on that, which is why listening is another way of communication. Okay, it's another way to communicate, learning and listening. Okay, if we are to listen, if we are to work together, we are to listen to one another. Because the moment there's a communication breakdown, simply because somebody refused to listen, it's going to be all she wrote. It's going to be more infighting as there is now. So, long story short, one thing will lead to another, and we will be back where we are, which is we are not working together effectively now, because due to the lack of understanding and the unwillingness to listen to one another. So what that telepathy card is saying is that even like nonverbal communication, even though it says a nonverbal communication, listening is a nonverbal communication. Listen to that person. Listen to that person. You can literally look at somebody, not say anything, but listen to what they're saying. Okay? Like basically teach yourself how to learn and relearn. Okay? And be open to criticism, be open to being called out for saying something problematic. This is not the time for tears, especially white tears. So this is not the time to be salty. If your feelings are hurt, ask yourself why they're hurt and where they're coming from. Okay, especially if you are considering yourself an ally, or working with allies, or working with people who are not like you. And when I say that, I'm talking about Black folks within the spectrum, or those who are even more marginalized within the spectrum. So that's what that card says. And so let's move on. This is Lemuria Returns, Earthly Spirituality, Community, Ocean Communication. And for those who are listening, this mermaid is holding her stomach. She's looking down at her stomach because she's pregnant. She's expecting. And so and this is what the community, we are to have an effective community. We are to have a close community. We are to have a strong community. Because if we do not have a strong community, we're not going to make it politically. If we don't know each other on an individual basis, or if we don't know ourselves on an individual basis, we cannot see the light in other people. We cannot see the light in each other. Okay, why do you think that there's so much oppression within the LGBTIQA community? Is because a lot of us have yet to see the light in one another. We've yet to see the light in one another. We're just seeing differences. We're just seeing differences in age, differences in color, differences in ethnicity, differences in gender expression, differences in sexual expression, differences in our relationships, platonic or otherwise. We're just seeing all these differences. And because we're seeing all these differences, we're not able to see beyond that. And we're just looking at the person from the outside, and just we're not getting to know that person, on a deeper level, or we're not able to see each other from a spiritual perspective. So that's that's one of the reasons why a lot of oppression happens. And white supremacy plays a huge part in that. But please understand that, those who adhere to that, white supremacy is an illusion that breaks down communities, that eats away at communities, simply because people give power. White folks rather give power to those communities, or to that illusion rather. And this is not nothing new. I mean, this has been going on for centuries. But unfortunately, a lot of those same ideologies, that illusion that white folks are superior, and in order to be valued, you have to be like them in some way, shape, or form. It eats away at it reached the gay community. It reached the LGBTIQA community. I just found out that there are trans folks who are conservative. There are trans folks who are, and I don't even know why I'm surprised at all. In fact, I remember, actually not even knowing that I was friends with this person, or not even knowing their ideologies outright. I remember unfriending a person years ago who was actually who was trans. She's a trans woman, but she was also conservative, and that came to light in 2016 when there was a lot of cop shootings, and there were a lot of black men in particular, dying at the hands of cops. And so she was basically defending the actions of the cops who murdered a man who was coming home from school. And I unfortunately forgot his name. Shame on me. But in 2016, he lost his life, and I would definitely remember unfriending her. And now with the rise of 45 in his administration, and using a lot of his power to basically spread a lot of propaganda, and a lot of not just hate, but just like evil. There's a lot. I'm finding out that there is a lot of people in the community that actually support him, trans people included. And that's what I'm talking about when I'm talking about the white supremacy breaking down the community, even among the most vulnerable folks. You know what I mean? And this is why intersectionality is very important, to learn about intersectionality and how it plays a huge part in how we see one another as well. Kimberly Crenshaw, who she came up with that phrase, intersectionality. And intersectionality actually means marginalized people experiencing different forms of oppression. Each individual is experiencing different forms of oppression, is different for each person. Okay. And so in order for us to come together, we are to know intersectionality. We are to know, how white supremacy has, affected all of us, especially in how it affects all of us, even on a spiritual level. But in order for us to have those conversations, you have to know who you are. And if you don't know who you are, you're going to be uncomfortable having those conversations. You wouldn't even know where to start. Now that I think about it. So what that card is saying going back to the cards, what that card is saying is that, and we are to have a community. We are to have in that community. We are to be deeply honest with each other, and we are to be deeply honest with ourselves. And so the last card here is transparency. It's upside down, but the transparency card is a mermaid, and she has black hair, and she's looking straight at you, and she has pearls around her neck, and she's very transparent. And she doesn't have anything on beneath her fin, because she is being herself. She's being transparent. And what this card is saying is honest, authentic, genuine, and present. A lot of us are not doing that. It's upside down. So basically what this card is saying is that a lot of us are not doing that. A lot of us are not being transparent. A lot of us are not being honest with ourselves. In order for us to have a community that's effective, both spiritually and politically, we are to be honest with ourselves. That's why we are to do the work necessary, the spiritual work necessary, in order for us to be whole. Because how are we going to be, telling people, to honor yourself, to love yourself, to fight for yourself on a political scale, to honor yourself, to, not to basically fight the system in some way, shape, or form, whether you're voting or protesting or doing some sort of, online activism, so on and so forth, doing something radical. How are you able to tell anyone to fight for themselves and to be their authentic selves, or to fight as if you are someone of value, if you do not see yourself as a person of value, when you don't see yourself as authentically as a spiritual being that you are? How are you able to fight for somebody when you have that sense of emptiness within you? When I say that sense of emptiness, not being, for not like honoring yourself, and for not being yourself and being comfortable in your own skin. How are you able to look someone in the eye, someone who is struggling as much as you are, and say that you are somebody who you don't see yourself as like that? You know what I'm saying? And I say that because I'm saying this from a personal experience. How in the world can you see the beauty in someone else? How can you see the power you're truly in someone else when you don't even recognize it in yourself? You get me? So what that card is saying is that transparency, when it talks about transparency, it talks about that gut level honesty that I talked about in the first or second episode, that in order for you to be effective politically, you have to have that gut level honesty with yourself, and a gut level honesty about your situations, about how you see yourself, how you see, your world, your environment, how you feel about your environment. And seriously, like, how are you able to help anybody on that level? And so all the spread that I have here is basically saying, like, look, we are to stick together as a team. As a community, the LGBTIQA community, we are to stick together in some way, shape, or form, in every way, shape, and form. But we are to honor ourselves individually, and and when we are able to do that, we're able to truly honor one another, and not undercut one another in order to gain power, with the U.S. government or the state government or the county or whatever, because that's not going to. By the end of the day, we're all being played by the same system. We're all being affected by the same system, and regardless of your privilege, don't if you are a white cis male, or a white cis woman, or a white person in general, or a non-black person of color, because y'all like to cut up too. Don't sit here and even begin to fool yourselves into thinking that the current administration is going to protect you. Don't ever think that the current administration is going to have your back. Don't ever think that the politicians that you voted for, even on a local level, is going to have your back. For the most part, just because you voted for them doesn't mean the work is over. You are to basically keep going. And to treat Black folks, or especially trans women of color, Black trans women in general, give them the respect that they are entitled to, because they are part of the community. They are out here changing lives, through writing, through voting, through, protest work. They are out here. The queer community is out here. And don't get it twisted. We need each other. We need each other. We need each other. And we can only work together. The only way we can work is together. But in order for you to get to that point, your ego has to get out of the way, and you are to see yourself as a spiritual being first and foremost, so you can see other people as that as well. In fact, that's for all of us. We are to see each other. All of us are to see each other. And those in the LGBTIQA community are to see each other as spiritual beings living human experiences and treat each other as such. Otherwise, our community will continue to falter and fall victim to the current administration or fascist administrations, or politicians who have their own agenda. So all we have is each other, and we are to act as such. So that's all the messages that Spirit had for us. So there's a lot to think about. That's even for me. But thank you so much. Thank you so much for tuning in, for listening. And any of that resonated with you, please post a comment. I would love to hear from y'all, especially those within the queer and trans community. So before I end tonight's episode, I have a couple of awesome announcements, to be honest with you. Performers Javi Mason 3 and Lady Dame Figura Aditi are running a campaign for the Black Trans Prayer Book, an interfaith, multidimensional, artistic and theological work, featuring spells, poems, stories, meditations, and incantations created by Black trans people and gender non-conforming folks. So the money being raised, right, through the campaign will not only fund the book, but put money in the pockets of the artists that contributed to this work. So they put all their whole need into this project. You understand me? So, and it's very much needed, especially for the trans and queer community. A lot of us have lost faith, and this will actually help us regain it, I'm pretty sure. So please share, donate, support, and I'll put the link in the descriptions. So you will have access to it. Also, if you're in the Brooklyn, New York area, the Black Trans Media and Power Plant organizations are hosting a living altar in honor of Black trans lives stolen and still here. A living altar is a space honoring Black trans people, both here and in spirit. There's a workshop, some energy work, a meet and greet, performances, and so much more. And it's on Saturday, November 17th at 6 p.m. And the address is 562 Evergreen Avenue in Brooklyn, New York. For more information, click on the event page link in the descriptions, and I'll put that in there after the show. So if you would like to have a private reading with me, just hit me up at bowtiepsychic@gmail.com. I'm looking very forward to giving you a private reading. As I said before, I do card readings. I'm an aura reader. I also do picture readings, and I am also a medium. So I have all kinds of stuff going on. So me and Spirit are very, very happy to work with you. Just hit us up at bowtiepsychic@gmail.com, and I'll put my email in the descriptions as well. So also be sure to hit the subscribe button if you like what you've heard and like what you've seen. And so you'll never miss another episode of the Bowtie Psychic again. And to listen to the audio version, because the video that you're seeing, this is for YouTube, but there's an audio version of the Bowtie Psychic as well. Excuse me. Click on either the Spotify or Libsyn button on the channel art logo above you. So thanks again for tuning in and sharing your energy with me. I greatly appreciate it. Until next time, peace.